I need to tell someone what I did, and you're going to think I'm terrible. But there's something about watching someone you love cry that nobody understands until they felt that mix of rage and terror that's only mine to carry now. Everyone thinks Marcus is the one who walked away and never looked back, but the truth is, I'm the one who ruined everything. And here's what really happened that night in our kitchen when I called him pathetic for crying over something so small it should have never mattered. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is I knew exactly what I was doing when I said it, and I chose those words on purpose because I wanted to hurt him more than he'd already hurt me. And I had been planning it for 3 weeks without realizing I was planning anything at all. If I don't tell this story, you'll never understand why he wiped his face, stood up, and never came back. But once you know what I know about the Instagram message that popped up on his phone while he was making pasta, you'll see why I had no choice but to destroy the only good thing I'd ever had. I should start with what everyone thinks they know. They think Marcus left because we fought about money again, or because I was stressed about my mom's cancer, or because we were both working too much and stopped talking except to argue about dishes and laundry. All of that's true, but it's not the real truth. It's just the wallpaper I hung over the hole I punched in our life. The real truth starts 6 months before that night, when Marcus started texting someone named Jake from his gym. Just gym stuff at first. What time is leg day? Can you spot me tomorrow? Normal guy friend stuff. I know because I looked at his phone while he was in the shower, and I told myself I was just being curious, not suspicious, because Marcus have never given me a reason not to trust him in the 4 years we'd lived together. But here's what I haven't told you yet, and it changes everything about why I became the kind of person who could call someone pathetic for crying. When I was 13, my dad left my mom for his dental hygienist, and the last thing he said to me before he walked out was, "Stop crying, you're being pathetic." I hadn't thought about that in 15 years until I saw Marcus's texts with Jake, and suddenly I was 13 again, watching my dad pack his bags while I begged him to stay. Everyone was trying to warn me about Jake, but I couldn't see that they meant something bigger than gym friendship. My best friend Sarah said, "You seem different lately, anxious." My mom, even with the chemo making her tired, asked, "Are you and Marcus okay? You snap at him a lot." But I was so focused on those texts that I missed that Marcus was pulling away from me because I was pulling away from him first. And I was too scared to admit I was doing it on purpose because I was convinced he was going to leave me anyway. Looking back, the signs were all there, but I was too busy creating the very thing I was afraid of to see that Marcus was actually trying to get closer to me. He suggested couples therapy. He started making dinner every night because he knew I was exhausted from visiting mom. He even tried to talk to me about Jake, saying, "I think you might be reading too much into this." But I heard, "You're being crazy," instead of, "I love you and I'm not going anywhere." That night, something happened that I've never told anyone about. Marcus had made my favorite carbonara and poured me a glass of wine, and he was trying to tell me about his day when his phone buzzed again. It was just Jake asking about protein powder, but I had been drinking since 4 p.m. because mom's doctor had called to say the chemo wasn't working. And I remember thinking, better to make him leave me now than watch him choose someone else later. I should have known something was wrong when I felt relieved instead of scared by what I was about to do. Marcus was standing there with flour on his hands from making fresh pasta, telling me about how he was worried about me, how he wanted us to go back to how we used to be, how he missed the version of me who laughed at his terrible jokes. And all I could think was that he sounded exactly like my dad sounded when he was trying to let us down easy. You're probably thinking I'm just another jealous girlfriend who couldn't handle her boyfriend having friends, but it gets worse. Because when Marcus started crying, real tears running down his face while he begged me to tell him what he could do to fix us, I didn't just think about my dad leaving. I thought about every night I'd spent waiting for Marcus to realize he could do better than me. Every time I'd scrolled through Jake's Instagram and saw that he was younger and fitter and probably didn't have my trust issues. Every moment I'd spent preparing for heartbreak instead of preventing it. This is where I really messed up. I looked at Marcus crying in our kitchen, flour in his hair and love in his eyes, even while I was destroying him, and I said it. "You're being pathetic." Not "you're being" or "this is pathetic," but exactly what my dad said to me word for word, because some twisted part of me needed to pass that pain to someone else instead of finally dealing with it. For a moment, I actually believed I would feel powerful after saying it. I thought I would feel safe if I was the one doing the leaving instead of being left. I told myself that Marcus would cry and then he would go to Jake's house and I would drink wine and listen to sad music and eventually feel relieved that I had prevented a booger heartbreak down the line. But what everyone could see was happening, except me, was that Marcus had never been planning to leave. The texts with Jake were just texts. The real person who was going to destroy our relationship wasn't Jake, or Marcus's potential wandering eye, or even my dad's ghost. It was me, standing in our kitchen, choosing to hurt someone who loved me because I was too much of a coward to believe I deserved that love. I know this makes me sound cruel and broken, and maybe I am those things, but you don't understand what it's like to spend your whole life waiting for the other shoe to drop, to get so good at anticipating abandonment that you start causing it just to get it over with. Marcus wasn't perfect. Sometimes he worked too late. Sometimes he forgot to ask about my day. Sometimes he left dishes in the sink. But he was trying, right up until I made him stop trying. Stop and think about this for a second. Would you have done what I did if you'd spent 15 years convinced that everyone leaves eventually? When Marcus wiped his face after I called him pathetic, I saw something break behind his eyes, and I knew immediately that I had gone too far. But instead of apologizing, I stood there, waiting for him to yell at me or hit me or do something that would prove I was right to push him away. Instead, he stood up straight, took off the apron I'd bought him for our anniversary, and walked to our bedroom. He packed one bag while I drank wine in the living room, pretending to scroll through my phone. When he came out 20 minutes later, he looked at me for a long time and said, "I hope you get help, Anna. I really do. But I can't be your punching bag while you figure it out." The comments on my posts after he left were all about what a jerk he was for giving up on me when my mom was sick, how real love means staying through the hard stuff, how I deserved someone who would fight for us. The DMs told a different story. Sarah wrote, "You know you caused this, right?" My brother sent, "Mom didn't raise you to treat people like this." Even Jake, who I had made into this monster in my head, messaged, "I hope you know he loved you more than anything. We all saw it. Why couldn't you?" That was 6 months ago. Mom died in April, and Marcus sent flowers but didn't come to the funeral. I heard he's seeing someone new, a teacher who volunteers at the animal shelter, someone who probably doesn't go through his phone or pick fights at dinner or call him pathetic when he cries. I hope she's gentle with him. I hope he never flinches when someone says they're fine. I hope he can still make fresh pasta without thinking about that night. The real reason I'm telling you this is because I keep thinking about what Marcus said before he walked out, that he hoped I would get help. At the time, I thought he meant therapy for my trust issues or grief counseling for losing Mom, but I understand now that he meant help learning to believe I deserve love, even when I'm not perfect. Help accepting that someone can choose me every day and not be planning their escape. Help stop turning my worst fears into self-fulfilling prophecies. I spent the first 3 months after he left drinking too much and stalking his new girlfriend's social media, convincing myself she was better than me, that he was happier without me, that I had done him a favor by setting him free. Then I spent 2 months in actual therapy, learning that hurting people before they can hurt you isn't protection. It's just hurting people who were never planning to hurt you at all. Now it's July, and here's where things stand. I haven't had a drink since Mom's birthday in May. I deleted Instagram because I realized I was using it to torture myself with other people's filter happiness. I started volunteering at the library's literacy program, teaching adults to read, which sounds small, but feels like rebuilding something instead of tearing it down. I know Marcus isn't coming back. I know I was the villain in our story, not because he was perfect, but because I chose to destroy something good rather than risk it being destroyed later. Calling someone pathetic for crying, especially when you're the reason they're crying, makes you the kind of person people write stories about on the internet, stories where everyone agrees the narrator is irredeemable. But I'm learning that being irredeemable doesn't mean you stop trying to be better. It means you carry what you did like a weight that gets lighter, not because the damage disappears, but because you learn to build new things that aren't founded on fear and self-sabotage. Marcus wiping his face and walking away wasn't just him leaving. It was the moment I finally saw myself clearly and realized that the person I hated most in our kitchen that night wasn't him or my dad or even Jake. It was me, and I had been the problem all along. Sometimes I still dream about that night, but now instead of watching Marcus cry, I dream about what would have happened if I had put down the wine glass and said, "I'm scared you're going to leave me like my dad left us, and I don't know how to believe you won't." I wake up from those dreams crying myself, which feels like justice of some sort, like the universe's way of teaching me that having feelings doesn't make you pathetic. It makes you human, and humans deserve love even when they mess up. But they have to choose to accept it instead of destroying it first. I'm going to tell Marcus all of this someday when enough time has passed that it won't sound like I'm asking for forgiveness, because I'm not. Some things you break so badly that saying sorry is just another way of making it about you. But I'll tell him anyway, because he deserves to know that his tears weren't pathetic. They were honest, and I was too much of a coward to be honest back. And maybe that's the beginning of learning how